It's time for the Unexplained News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the Unexplained News podcast, Margie K.
Welcome to Unexplained News. I'm your host, Margie K. We are here every Friday evening at 6 p.m. Central Time. And most of my shows are live, as you are aware, and of course tonight is no exception. I have a most excellent guest this evening that I think you're going to find fascinating. If you're into the paranormal at all, you're going to want to stay tuned for the entire show. Andy Thomas is one of the UK's best-known researchers and speakers on unexplained phenomena and cover-ups, making these subjects accessible and refreshingly unpolarized. He has given thousands of lectures in Britain and around the world for more than 3 decades. Andy's the author of many books, including his latest title, Strange, one of the broadest assessments on people's everyday paranormal experiences. Andy has made numerous radio and TV appearances over the years. Mainstream spots have included programs on the BBC, ITV, NBC, History Channel, National Geographic, Vice, and Sky. Welcome to the program from the UK, Andy Thomas.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I know it's very late for you where you are right now, so I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. You have a new book out. Of course, you've written a number of books, which we will eventually talk about, but let's start with, how did you get interested in the paranormal?
So I got drawn in well over 30 years ago now by crop circles and UFOs. And it was really, that kind of thing that made me aware of people who were studying all kinds of other paranormal things. And I realized just from my own experience with crop circles that, the mainstream media didn't discuss them properly. They didn't give the truth about them. It was always one-sided. It was always debunking. And I thought, well, if they're doing that, something like that, they must be doing it to anything deemed paranormal. And of course, Then you start to investigate one branch of the paranormal, and before you know it, you're meeting people who are investigating all of them. And I became fascinated by the whole thing and just wanted to get a good, broad look at it. And before I knew it, there I was giving talks about it, writing books, and my life took a whole different turn to what I ever thought it would.
And what type of work were you doing before you got involved in this?
So I was very much working in the music world. I was a musician, but I also wrote music for various projects, and then got into PR. So that was the world I was in. And then suddenly along came crop circles and everything that then followed from that. And yeah, it opened doors and made me realize that the world that we live in is actually far more interesting than many people would have us believe. And, my mission, if you like, has always been to show other people that there is something going on here that, we do need to talk about much more. And yet most people shy away from it, or we're told there's nothing there to see and we shouldn't worry about it. But I've discovered there is something to see, and we should not worry about it, but we should be aware of it. And I think really investigate anything that shines a whole new light on the way the universe works.
Indeed. And you mentioned that you're a musician. I've found that there are many people who are involved in paranormal investigations, or authors or podcasters who are musicians. And I wonder why that is. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, my guess there would be that it's quite a creative thing to be a musician. And if you're creative, you should be open to new imaginings. And, you are in some way more open to what's around you. And that's certainly true of many of the musicians I've worked with. So yeah, then if you're open to things like the paranormal, of course, you're going to be looking at things. You want that inspiration. You want to create in different ways. And now, I create by writing, and I create by giving presentations and trying to make this whole world of the strange, hence the book title, accessible to people. Because I'm very aware that some people they're a bit afraid to go near it. The media always puts a sort of spooky atmosphere around it, which sometimes they can be, of course. But equally, it can be truly fascinating. It can be beautiful sometimes, the paranormal, and it makes you look again at the way that the whole world that we live in ticks, and just to make people look again at that, I think it's a really important thing to do, especially in this world today where so often you're closed down by skeptics, or you're told just to look at the material world or to look over there and over there, but not here. Whatever we should, of course, be looking there.
Right, exactly. Do you find that the world has changed recently and people are more open to discussing paranormal subjects?
Yeah, something has given. I mean, I think social media, of course, for all the good and bad of it, what it did do was enable people to share things about experiences that they were having, but that previously there wasn't really an outlet for it. Thought of meeting up with people or, magazines, and suddenly they could exchange, and you found that the unusual experiences that you were having were actually happening to other people as well. So that made a big difference. And of course, now, even if the mainstream still debunks and laughs, you could just put that aside and say, well, what is mainstream anyway? And more people now have the chance to share these ideas in their own way. And so gradually that is having, I think, a wider knock-on effect. I mean, just a good example of that here in England, we got the BBC, of course, which has been in the news of late. But even they, who were very closed to the paranormal for many years, they've started to cover it a little bit more, and there's programs about ghosts and things. And that's really new. And that, I think, that sort of identifies that they realize there is an audience for it, that rather than making fun of them all the time, perhaps they should open up to them and be there more for them, which is a good thing. I don't always like the way they cover it, but at least they are opening those doors.
Yes, and there are a lot of good shows coming out of the UK as well. What is your new book Strange about, and why is a book like this needed right now?
So, in a way, I've been very lucky because I was asked quite early on when I got involved with the world of investigating the unexplained, to be asked to give presentations. And people found out what I was doing and said, would you come along and talk about it? And before I knew it, without any planning, there I was addressing community audiences who weren't really, specifically targeted at anything unusual, but they just wanted somebody to come along and do something that was a bit out of the ordinary. And therefore, I became exposed to meeting so many just very normal, everyday people. And of course, because they'll see me standing up on a stage talking openly about these things, it opens them up, because a lot of people are afraid to share experiences because they feel somebody will make fun of them, as indeed sometimes that does happen. But when they've seen me being up there and open about it, and they see I've written books about it and whatever, they realize they can share things with me. So over the years, I realized people were telling me incredible stories, and I would then think, well, that's really similar to what I heard over there from that person. And gradually I thought, I need to write this down, because this is such a broad cross-section of the population that, perhaps hasn't been covered before in this way. I need to record what they're saying. So I've been writing down their stories. People have been sharing their stories with me and emailing them to me. And Strange is really an analysis of all of that. It's showing that everyday, really normal people with no interest in this are still having very, very extraordinary experiences, and I thought trying to make people look at that, to get that conversation going, was a really crucial thing to do. So it's a way of looking at what is happening here, what does this mean, and hopefully encouraging other people to share their experiences.
And you've got quite a few stories about people's experiences, their personal experiences. What are some regarding ghosts or UFOs or psychic experiences that you can tell us a little bit about tonight?
Yes, I mean, the book, so it's split into a number of categories, but what you realize as the book goes on is that they actually link together, perhaps more than you might think. So I kind of go
Yes.
to begin with in order of what people tend to speak about the most, and ghosts would certainly be very much at the top of that list. So many people are having ghost experiences of different kinds. Now, some, it might be an apparition that comes out of nowhere. They'll see somebody walk through a wall. I've had a number of people who are couples or groups of people who've all seen the same thing at the same time. So it's not just a hallucination, which is what we're normally told. But then, of course, you get other people who will have interaction with people that they knew, often loved ones, relatives, or whatever, who passed on, and often fairly recently, and they've come back. And they've had conversations with the people that are remaining here, and they are extraordinary. And that, to me, is often comforting. And the people that describe those experiences say, it was actually a beautiful thing. It wasn't a scary experience. So there's a number of different kinds, whereas there are some, of course, ghost experiences which are more scary, and then you do get spirits which do seem to be a bit mischievous and darker. So all sides of that are reflected in the book, but then you start to realize, but there's also out-of-body experiences and there's near-death experiences, and you think, well, they are related, because like an out-of-body experience, in a way, it's a way of being a ghost without actually being dead. And I'm sure that and many of your viewers will know, the ability to project our consciousness is real. So what does that have to say about the way that reality works? And then you put that together with apparitions of, be it aliens, angels, whatever you hear described. Maybe what it all says to us, and the book gets to this conclusion, is that the world is leaky. The universe doesn't run from A to B. Time and space is a very strange thing. And entities clearly live within these multidimensional layers that come and go. And sometimes even we come and go, and we can project ourselves, or people report time slips, things like that. So to put that all together and realize that what looks like separate phenomena actually isn't, and it's probably much more related than we know. I think that's a very important thing to do now when people are beginning to look at these things far more holistically.
Yes, you've reached the same conclusion that a number of investigators I know, and and myself included, have come to, that all of these things are related. And when you have a person who has seen UFOs, seen and interacted with extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings, people who have passed on, their spirits, whatever you want to call them, it seems that the person themselves is responsible as far as their level of awareness or their level of consciousness. Are you finding that more and more people are becoming aware of these things?
I think so. And I mean, what I think is becoming clear too is, so, we will talk about a place that attracts strange phenomena, whether it be ghosts or aliens, or, the whole Skinwalker Ranch type phenomenon where odd things seem to come and go in certain places. You have that, and that's recognized. But you also have people who are themselves, it would seem, portals. And I write about this in the book, that they seem to attract phenomena to them. Maybe because they are on some frequency level that, it is very open to that. And so you get tales, and there are some of these in the book, where somebody will have a lot, say, of ghost experiences or poltergeists in one house. They move homes and they think, great, I've left all of that behind. And then it starts up again where they go, because it's being carried by them, really, rather than just the space, although spaces can also be portals as well. And when you start to chat with people and say, this is perhaps the lucky gift that I've been given, to have such exposure to so many different people, you realize that this is now happening either more and more, or more and more people are beginning to open up about it. And I think now that we live in a world where, we're continually told by scientists even, it's multidimensional. Look at quantum research. Things are
Mhm.
entangled. They're saying that on one level, and on the other level, they don't want to acknowledge the paranormal, which is probably explained by many of those things. But others
Yeah.
are, and they're saying, well, hang on a minute, maybe that explains what's happened to me. And so they're beginning to open up, I think, more than they did. And I really hope that will happen more and more.
Do you have any stories in your book about time slips or time anomalies?
I
Can you
do.
share one with us?
Yes, I mean, so obviously you could argue some ghosts that don't seem to be spirits, but seem to be just performing an action round in a loop. It's almost like you are seeing back through time or even forwards in time sometimes. That's a form of a time slip that you are witnessing from the outside. But yes, there are tales in the book of people who have witnessed it from the inside. Now, I'll give you just one example of that. There was a chap called Tony who I knew well. And sadly no longer in this realm today. He used to drive a van around London. And this was several decades ago now. And there was an area he knew, and he just drove down there to make one of his deliveries. When, as he drove and he was looking around, he thought, what's going on? It's like they're filming some old film or something. And people walking around him were in like old dress, like early 1900s. And there were
Mhm.
very old cars there, and there were horses going through the streets. And he thought, they must be filming something. But then the more he looked, the more he realized what had happened was everything had changed. He had literally somehow gone back through time. And he got this really weird feeling. He wanted to get out of the car and explore it, as you probably would. But he also knew in his core, if he got out of the car, he would be trapped back in that early time. So he had to
Yeah.
like force himself to just sit there. And then as he watched, it all just faded away and just went back to the normal modern world again around him. And he swore by that. And I've heard other people describing similar things, walking around, and suddenly the environment they're in, it's like they're seeing it as it was or experiencing it, not just seeing it as it was long ago. So these things do happen. And that's just one good example of that. And again, what it says is that, yeah, time and space, it's a leaky phenomenon. It doesn't always work the way that we think.
It makes you wonder about all of these missing people all over the world who have just suddenly disappeared. They've left behind all their belongings, and they're just gone. It makes you wonder if they have slipped into a portal of some type, and they're still alive, but they're in a different time.
It can't be ruled out. I mean, obviously, sometimes there's darker options as to what's happened to them, but also for those that see strange creatures. So we mentioned Skinwalker Ranch, and a strange
Yeah.
creature seemed to come and go there. But then you get sightings of Bigfoot or the Sasquatch or the Yeti or whatever, but nobody can ever seem to find where they live or their lair in any provable way. But maybe we're looking in the wrong dimension. If they have the ability to cross dimensions, maybe this isn't where they live, and sometimes we see them come through here. And that may well be true of a number of entities that people see. And again, whether it be creatures, angels, aliens, whatever it is, ghosts, in a
Mhm.
way, what you're looking at are beings that just cross dimensions, and we give them labels. And sometimes they may well be all the things people say they are, but equally there might be labels that we give them because we don't really understand what we're seeing. But we know there are other realms. Those that do astral projection have described being able to go to these other realms. Just every now and then, it's like the doorway opens here and they come in here, or we sometimes occasionally cross over into their worlds. So, yeah, I mean, I think that we're always sort of seeing everything in one reality. But if it is a multi reality, yeah, things are going to come and go. That almost seems perhaps an inevitability, really, rather than a strangeness on one ironic level.
Do you ever find when you are working on an investigation or you're talking to witnesses that then you become part of the scenario? You become part of the investigation?
I think not too badly. I mean, I'm very keen on trying to keep myself out of influencing what somebody is saying, or certainly what they are experiencing. I mean, I've had my own experiences of the paranormal, and in the book Strange, I relate some of those because they interrelate with other stories that I've heard from other people. So I've seen balls of light flying over crop circles. I've had my own ghost experience. I've had a premonition that was so real. It wasn't really a premonition. That was like a time slip where I experienced time twice. And I explain this in the book. And these things that have happened to me, that strangely, I didn't always think that much about at the time, but I realized they've made me far more open to listening to other people. Because what I have found is the tendency when somebody shares a story is for other people, yes, either to try to shape it into what they want it to be, or they leap in with denial. Well, that can't happen. You must have dreamt it. You must have been drinking, all of this. And that to me is what I try not to do. I try not to judge. And the accounts that I give in the book, I try to deliver without judgment, though I do try to then analyze it. And I had a panel of experts that came in to help me who are open to the paranormal, but also very scientifically minded to see, right, how could this be happening with our new understanding of the way science is opening up quantum realms and things like that. So there is analysis, but not judgment. It is not for me to say to somebody, no, that's not how it happened, because I wasn't there. If that's how something felt to them, that must always be respected. And I think we should always hear people before we start to sort of project our own version onto them.
How do you get people to open up to you and tell you about their stories?
So, I mean, again, in a way, it's kind of come to me because I'm up there on platforms talking about this kind of thing. And people think, well, he's going to listen to me. And they'll often come up to me at the end of watching me give a lecture. And they'll often open with the words, listen, I've never told anybody this before, but... And they'll then share the story with me. And sometimes they will be standing next to their friends, and their friends will look at them and say, you've never told me that before. And it's because they haven't felt safe to share it. So in a way, I mean, I have over the years, of course, asked people, has anything happened to you? But mostly it's the other way around. People come to me and they share stories, or, they will know of me and they will email me and say, well, this has happened. And of course, I have to exercise discernment, because although I don't like to judge, equally you have to think, is this person being genuine? Does this sound like this is coming from an authentic place? And everything that's in the book, they are the ones that I felt really were authentic. Anything I had any doubt about, I didn't include. But and you will know this, when somebody is speaking from the heart and they're just sharing something genuine that happened to them, when that is the case, you can tune into that and you can feel that. And they're just desperate in a way to share these experiences. It's almost like they just feel they need to express it to somebody. And often they've sat on these stories about things that have happened to them all their lives and never felt safe to share it. So it's a nice moment when somebody does, because I feel very honored by that they feel safe enough to do that. And so really the book Strange is the culmination of years of this, of people sharing it. And I want to share something back now and try to get this out in the open and get conversations going about it.
You mentioned your scientific panel. Can you tell us who some of the scientists are?
So for certain, one of them is Dr. John Cole. I mean, he is a physicist. He was a maths teacher at a very big school here in England for the years. But again, he is also happily, and this is not always the case, but he is open to the supernatural, if you want to call it that, the paranormal and the spiritual. And he will come in and say, well, look, there is a way that this could happen. So he was one good example of that. The other was a chap called Chris Connolly. Chris is a space scientist. He works on space missions here in England, but he is also a medium. And he has to kind of keep that quiet, really, for much of his time in the world that he moves in. But he's found a way to meld them together. And if you look Chris Connolly up, you'll find that he's doing scientific experiments very important ones, I think, to show that mediumship does actually change the brain. It's recordable on instruments, that something is happening, that is not just somebody making something up. There is an actual shift, a change coming in. And he is trying to demonstrate that scientifically, because he knows that if that can be done, it's going to be taken more seriously. And he moves in the world of science. And then the other chap who is involved, who I've worked with for many years on and off, is Michael Barry Reynolds. And he is a statistician. He wants data, he wants facts, he wants numbers, but even he can see there's something going on in certain realms. And, he's a very good person. If you want to understand something as a chart, or say, well, what do you think's going on here? He will analyze it. But again, he won't judge it. He will not debunk it. He'll look at it in the face, as it were, and give you some good feedback. So I thought it was very important that it wasn't just me giving my opinion, that I had some other views in there too. And that's sort of woven in to the narrative of the book.
That sounds really good. Sounds very interesting. I ordered my copy today at Amazon. So you. I will get it later, but I'm very interested in reading it. We are on a break, and we'll be back right after these messages.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com. Behind every ghost story and creature feature lies a far more terrifying truth. The real monsters wear human faces. In the chilling book, All Monsters Are Human, from Derek Smith, 10 Twisted Tales expose the darkest parts of the human soul. From killers hiding in plain sight to obsessions turned deadly, each story invites you to step into a shadowed world where morality unravels, and the only thing more terrifying than what lurks in the dark is who. These aren't just horror stories. They're reflections of ourselves, showing what happens when fear, rage, guilt, and desire take control. Visit unexmedia.com for more information on All Monsters Are Human from Derek Smith. And you can purchase them at amazon.com from unexmedia.com.
We are back with the next news. I'm your host, Margie Kay, and with me this evening is Andy Thomas. He is an author, and we're talking about his latest book, Strange, at the moment. And I'm going to pull up that picture right now of the book as soon as I can find it. Here we go. Okay. That is a nice cover. And I like the center part where you're kind of looking through a distorted lens. I assume that was well planned.
Well, if you look carefully, so there's a fisheye lens, and you've got just normal people walking around either side, and yet manifesting in the middle, when you look closely, is this sort of ghostly figure. Could be a ghost, could be an alien coming from a portal, from a doorway. And it's just making the point, really, as the book does. This is going on in the world in which we live, and it's actually going on more than people think. So it's a very subtle way of showing that, and yet most people are not aware. Only sometimes do they suddenly become aware of the strange that walks among us. And the ones that do, it does often change them very profoundly.
Oh, yes. I've talked to a number of people who never had anything strange happen to them. And then all of a sudden, boom, like they see a UFO or they see a ghost. And they come to me and say, it's real. It's real because they experienced it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's a funny thing because also you have some people that it changes them. Although I've also met some people who will insist they are skeptics and say they don't believe in these things, but they will still tell you about the ghost or the UFO that they saw.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, it's a strange that, again, there's that denial. They that part of them that can't accept that it's real, because that might then mean changing their view of the world around them. So it's funny. And I hear that a lot. They'll say they're a skeptic, but then you realize, well, they're not really, but they still insist that they are. But there we are. That's their choice.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about AI for a minute. Do you think that AI technology is going to help us in paranormal or research?
So as the book progresses and you get towards the end of the book, I start to look at, well, what is the future of paranormal research? Where's it going to go? And look, AI is a big issue for our world. We know it is. It's going to put a lot of people out of work. It's going to present a lot of issues. It will also do some wonderful things. So like anything, it's its dreams and nightmares coming up. But one thing it could be useful for, because it analyzes data very well, and when quantum computing becomes more available, which we think it will, which is much faster, it gives incredible powers of calculation that we've never been able to have until now. It might well start to look at the paranormal. It might start to think, well, hang on, I'm going to go beyond those that say it doesn't exist, and I will just look at the data when it gets a bit more intelligent and a bit more correct than it is at the moment. And it might start to consider ways in which the universe could produce the phenomena that we see in a way that is not loaded with denial. And it might even, in due course, come up with ways in which this could be explained. And who knows, might even learn to open doorways to it, to actually trigger it. Now, maybe that's a little further down the line yet. We're not there yet. But I do think it will be fascinating what it discovers. And many of the things that, people have denied, it might look at and say, yeah, but hang on, this wasn't considered, that wasn't considered. And it will do it, we hope, without any bias. The problem we have at the moment is that a lot of AI is programmed with bias. But I hope that a time will come where it isn't, and it will be intelligent and powerful enough to see beyond that. And what it reveals could be extraordinary. And I mean, if it learns eventually, and again, we're going a long way ahead here, but to manipulate time and space itself, it might even learn to become psychic. I know some people think a computer could never do that, only we, organic life, could. And maybe they're right. I mean, I don't know. But it's possible that, it might transcend all of that one day. And, that last big chapter, it really does look at what is the future of thinking, really, as well as investigating the paranormal. And the implications are huge. We're only just at the infancy of AI, the world that we're moving into. And there is a discussion of that. And so it is unsettling in many ways. And I recognize that. And the book's honest about that. But it also offers opportunities that maybe we've not had before. So, yeah, we're moving into unsettling, but also very exciting times. And I do think in due course, yeah, paranormal research will probably benefit from AI in the end.
I can see that. And I'm thinking that AI will learn about other dimensions and our theories about time and space, and then it will want to explore that. And
Right. Yes.
I can see AI doing time travel much more easily than humans.
Well,
You,
the
you
thing
never know.
is, I mean, so already with quantum computing, it has calculation powers, things that would have taken decades for a person to have worked out it can do in seconds. So with that kind of calculation power, yeah, if there is anything that opens portals up between dimensions or whatever, sooner or later it's going to work out how that works. And when it does, it might just say, and here's how you do it. And we might find that that completely changes the way we interact with reality. So I don't think this is next week, but I don't think so far in the future that it can't be imagined. And I certainly think, it's quite a ride that we've got ahead. But of course, it also brings many dangers too. But so let's hope we get over those first.
Absolutely. You've written several books. I'm not quite sure how many you've written, but one of them caught my eye, Conspiracies. Tell us a little bit about what this is.
Yeah, so I mean, over the years, and it began again because I got involved with things like crop circles and, whatever people think, and I know many people are very skeptical, what I realized was they were not being represented correctly. And I've realized that that's true with the paranormal in general. And then researching those things, I began to meet people who were researching conspiracies. Now, this was before it became the big world of social media that we're in today, where nearly everything's conspiracy theory. And I realized, well, they also are probably being misrepresented. The problem that we have is that everything is loaded. Everybody wants to load the dice to make you think this or make you think that. And what I've always tried to do is just stand back from it and say, what's the overall picture here? What's the real evidence here? Again, without trying to be too judgmental, but trying to hear out all sides. The book that you showed there, Conspiracies, and also it's a sequel, which is called The New Heretics, which looks at why people believe what they believe. It makes a case that when you look back through history, certainly there have been some conspiracies. To say that there are none today and that it's all madness is clearly not true. Which ones you believe in, I mean, it comes down to your personal view on one level, but it also must come down to evidence. And, putting something out there on social media just because that's what you believe, well, that's fine on one level. But if you have no evidence to back it up and you don't have a constructive debate about why you believe that, you're kind of not really helping the situation, and it just causes more confusion. But what the book tries to do is say, here's the pattern of history. This is where conspiracies have occurred. This clearly is not being accurately represented today. What does this mean? And ultimately, it leaves the reader to make their own minds up. However, it does make clear that just to dismiss talk of cover-ups and conspiracies is, I think, an unwise thing to do, because sometimes there is a truth to it. And again, what I'm always trying to do is to open up conversations and allow these things to be discussed rather than closing them down.
What are some of the conspiracies that you covered in that book?
So we covered some classic ones. I mean, the obvious one being like, did we really go to the moon? And some controversial ones, of course, like 9/11 and all of that. And again, what I'm trying to do is not judge, but say, here's the arguments. Is there any validity to some of these arguments? And certainly some are. I mean, if you just take the moon landings, did we go to the moon? I don't know. I wasn't there. I hope we did, because it seemed quite exciting at the time when I was young and growing up. However, are there some issues around the evidence? And when you ask that question, the answer does seem to be yes. And, I think there are debates you can have about some of the imagery that we are told is taken on the moon. There are anomalies that are quite hard to explain. But equally, I'm very aware that it has been made a joke. And, Kim Kardashian was talking about it recently. And then people laugh it all off. And I'm always trying to separate that and say, okay, but what's the reality here? Many of us of certain generations, less so with younger people now, we have an emotional attachment to something like the moon landings. In a time of upheaval, it seemed like a positive, good thing that we were doing. When you just detach from that and look at the evidence, you discover, there are grounds to doubt. And quite a lot of people are now beginning to say, though not the media over here, but I don't know what it's like in America, why is it so hard to go back to the moon? like the Artemis Project seems to keep meeting, struggle after struggle, block after block, delay after. You think, well, it all seems so easy in the 1970s, can't we just use that technology? And that's the question that I think isn't unreasonable to ask. And maybe now they're just being a lot more safer than they would have been back then. But it's understandable why some people get a little bit dubious. And I mean, many polls, if you look at what people believe, I mean, some polls have put it that more than 50% of the world doesn't believe the official story about the moon landings. And what that says to me is whether we went or didn't go, that's quite an important thing to acknowledge. Where is that doubt coming from? Is it just fed by misinformation, or are there grounds for discussion here? And that's what I'm trying to do always, is say, well, what is the ground for discussion? Then make your own mind up, but let's have a look at it. Let's not just put a block on it. And that's what a lot of people try to do in the mainstream. And of course, that doesn't make talk of conspiracies go away. It makes it worse. And those that believe in them will say, they're not representing me correctly. I must be right. And that's why they're trying to stop me, which, of course, in itself is not necessarily a good judgment. But that's the way it works. So it's trying to get around that, because at the moment, polarization, as you know, is one of the big problems of our time. And it is possible to avoid it. It's not fashionable to avoid it. But I think until we do learn to do that, we're not going to get that much further forward, sadly.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I can't wait to read that one either. And then I saw that you wrote a book called Christmas, A Short History from Solstice to Santa, which I think is really important because I don't think people really know the history of the holiday. And here, apparently, that is what you have done. And so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny because some people say, how does Christmas connect with the paranormal and talking about cover-ups? But to me, I just follow lines of inquiry that just feel natural to me. And I always loved Christmas, but I was always fascinated, because I just am, about where does it all come from? And again, putting aside the dogma and what you're told to believe, what actually is the evidence for why we do what we do at Christmas? And the book is very much a celebration of it. And what you discover is that it's layered. Lots of people have their own interpretation of what you should celebrate at Christmas. But in the end, when you look back at like the earlier big traditions and festivals that came before we called it Christmas, the winter solstice celebrations, a lot of different celebrations of light in the darkness around the world, you realize that it all means the same thing. In essence, you are celebrating light and the return of light in whatever way, whether that be celebrating the birth of a Messiah or the return of the sun to full strength or whatever. But the other thing you realize is that many of the traditions that we have are rooted in really ancient stuff, really old rituals that go back a very, very long way into Egyptian mythology, Norse mythology. But then the other thing, and this book brings it out, that I think a lot of people don't realize, is that some would argue today that Christmas is a bit of a, opium for the people, just a way of keeping them distracted for a few days. But actually, Christmas has long been seen as radical. And a lot of people have tried to stop Christmas. So the Pilgrim Fathers, when they arrived over where you are, of course, would not celebrate Christmas because they were very much more of the Puritan mindset, and they didn't believe you should celebrate Christmas. And over here, we had the English Civil Wars, and we eventually wound up under the rule of a Puritan called Oliver Cromwell, rather famously, and they actually banned Christmas. So I think we here were the first sort of nation to completely ban Christmas, and Scotland did as well. And then when you look back at that and you see the fight people had to start celebrating Christmas again, and how long it took to come back to full strength, that you begin to appreciate it. And you think, okay, maybe there is something worth doing here. It was worth fighting for, and many people had to bring Christmas back. And it makes you, I think, take it less for granted. And when you see where it's all come from and coming up to modern times and all the kind of different things that make it what it is, it's far more interesting than people think it is. And what it does for me is think, yeah, this is worth celebrating. I mean, celebrate whatever version you want, but it's still worth doing, because I think we've got very cynical about things like that. And that seems a shame to me, you know, in a world that, as we know, is pretty dark sometimes. Just to stop and celebrate light in whatever way works for you, you know, I think is a crucial thing to do.
Very good. Sounds fascinating. And then I wanted to bring this one up, an introduction to crop circles, and you've written one or two more about crop circles as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I have. So, I mean, this book, I mean, you know, I stand by it very much. But it's very much the shorter version of an earlier, much longer book I wrote called Vital Signs. So, Vital Signs is still out there somewhere. And what I was trying to do with that and here in a more compact form in the introduction book is, again, just to say to people, look, here's the debates, the arguments about crop circles. Here's what's actually happened, not what the skeptics tell you have happened. Because if you go onto Wikipedia, you would absolutely assume they were all made by people. They were all invented by two elderly men in 1990. And of course, it's just not that straightforward. And, you know, crop circles go back centuries. And there's records going back to the 1930s and photographs. And, you know, I know we've talked about having a whole program about crop circles, so maybe we should do that. But, you know, what these books do, and that book especially, is just to say, look, here's why the debate about crop circles has never really gone away. Because we all know some are man-made. Everybody gets that. Does that explain the whole thing? No. And there's too much evidence. There's too much eyewitness testimony. People who've watched crop circles appearing within seconds. There's biological anomalies in some of them. There's incredible geometry, you know, strange lights get seen in and around them. And again, I've been working with this for 34 years now. And what I've realized is crop circles are not straightforward. You know, a lot of people think there's going to be an easy answer. And maybe I thought that when I first began, and I now know it's not easy. And that's why it's still debated. And I think it is fascinating that even now you get so many skeptics still trying to attack it, desperate to prove they're all man-made, and yet they never quite can. But that desperation says to me that there is something about crop circles, therefore, that should be looked at. Because you can always be sure that if somebody doesn't want you to talk about something, there is something worth talking about. And, you know, that's a good example of that.
Have you been inside a crop circle?
Many hundreds, yes. So, I mean, I'm less active than I am today because life's busy and there's lots of things going on. But I spent many years, like, just going to every crop circle I could, photographing them, measuring them, surveying them, taking samples. So, yeah, absolutely. I've been into many, many crop circles over the years and lived to tell the tale.
Well, that's good. That's one of the things that I would love to do, but in the United States, we have very few, at least very few that are reported. And I do know some people who are farmers who tell me, oh, yes, in 1975, we had a crop circle in our field, and we immediately, you know, got rid of all the evidence because we didn't want anybody thinking we had aliens here, or, you know, something like that. That happens a number of times. They seem to be more hush-hush about it here in the US.
I mean, you have definitely had crop circles over the years, and a very good researcher called Jeffrey Wilson did a lot of work documenting them. It's certainly been quiet in more recent years. I mean, yeah, it is extraordinary. You have miles and miles of fields and yet not that many crop circles. But I'm sure that, yes, some have just not been reported, and in a very remote area. The last thing a farmer wants is everybody arriving there and damaging their fields. So they just get rid of them as quickly as they can. So I'm sure many more get missed. Here in England, we do get far more crop circles. We do seem to be crop circle central for whatever reason. And maybe we'll talk about that in another show. But, you know, it's more compact. It's easier here to find them. It's harder to miss one. Although even there, sometimes they do. But yeah, America, you're not a hotspot, but there have been times where you've had years where there's been a few more. For instance, in Ohio, near the Serpent Mounds, which the sort of ancient mounds you have there.
Mhm.
There was a spate of crop circles at one point back in the 1990s. So it does happen. But yes, for some reason, you're not gifted that much with them. But it might be geological. There's a lot of debate about why some areas get more than others. It's not that one place is better than another. There's probably various qualities which are playing a role there.
Are there any paranormal hotspots that where if somebody wants to have an experience, they could go to and perhaps get lucky and have an experience?
So, I mean, if you took something like, UFOs, obviously we know there are definite areas where many of those are seen. We have hotspots like that here in Britain. You have your own in America. And of course, if you're anywhere near somewhere like Area 51, are they testing something? Are they alien? Well, that's another debate. But, a lot of strange things do get seen flying around there. And again, this is something which is now a really hot topic. And, we've just seen the movie come out, The Age of Disclosure, which is trying to get a really sensible debate going about it, because so many high-level people are now seeing these things. So you've got that side of it. You've got areas where more crop circles appear than others, and especially in the West Country of England, that seems to be the main hotspot. And people also see strange lights and things there. But in terms of other phenomena like ghosts, interestingly, and the Strange book discusses this, where there has been a lot of death, sadly, perhaps obviously, but that's often where you get a lot of ghosts. So battlefields would be a good example of that. And the Battle of Gettysburg in the American Civil War, is it just tourist spin? I don't know. But there's so many accounts of people who've been in the area today who've heard cries of, shouting and death and not very nice things. It's almost like battlefields, they leave a scar in time and space. And sometimes the doorway opens up and you hear it. Same with big train crashes or other disasters. So, yeah, if there's anywhere like that and you're desperate to see a ghost or hear something strange, you could do worse than start there. But, there's obviously a disturbing element to that. So you better be steeled for whatever happens. And I'm well aware there is always some mythology which is stirred up around these things. However, I have heard from a number of people, and again, it's in the book, who have experienced the sounds of battle and very strange sightings where there were battles where they didn't even necessarily know that was the case until later. So, yes, something about traumatic deaths will often leave ghosts of that kind that seem a little bit stuck between dimensions. And I'm sure you will have discussed this on previous shows with other speakers. When you leave this world calmly and gracefully, it seems to be a better transition. If you end your life in a very quick way or a very unpleasant way, you're more likely to be left as a ghost for whatever reason, which I discuss in the book, possibilities. But it is fascinating. So the way we go does seem to matter if there's any choice in it. And of course, sometimes there isn't.
I've also noticed in some of these shows and then also in visiting England that a lot of the castles are haunted. And I suppose that would be expected given the many generations that they've been around, many hundreds of years, that things have gone on there, battles or people just dying on site. Have you been to many of the castles?
Yeah, I love castles anyway. History is something that I'm absolutely fascinated by.
Mm-hmm.
And we are lucky because we've got castles everywhere. And where I grew up in a town called Lewes down here in England, I had the castle on the horizon. You just grew up with castles, So, yes, they are places, a lot of them were used for centuries. So there's a lot of activity. And if battles were there, again, you've got that disruption there. But yeah, there's other places. Interestingly, wherever there has been a lot of human activity, you will often, inevitably, I suppose, get more ghost or paranormal activity. And another place where you tend to get that, and this is in the book, are hotels. And obviously, especially older hotels. A lot of human dramas play out in hotels, good and bad, and it seems to disrupt the energy, call it what you will there. And yeah, there's several stories about very strange experiences in hotels. So, anywhere where there's been a lot of focused human activity, of course, that's going to be far more likely to be a portal for the strange.
Mm-hmm. Andy, where can people get your books?
No, I mean, you can find them in all the usual places that sell books. Strange is available in America and Britain and Australia, around the world, Amazon, anywhere like that, Barnes and Noble. Yeah, I mean, just look me up. And if anybody wants the short version to them to understand where you can buy them, have a look at my website, which is truthagenda.org. Truthagenda.org, and that you can find all about Strange and my other books and my other work, and there's lots of videos to watch and articles to read. So yeah, I'm out there. Just look up the book Strange anywhere that sells books, and you will find it. And the subtitle is Paranormal Realities in the Everyday World, which kind of tells it like it is, really.
And that is the name of this broadcast. And I thank you so much. It's fascinating speaking with you. And I look forward to reading your books and having you back in January to talk about crop circles.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And that will do it for this evening. I will see you here again next week.